IVM.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawalla, your peak performance coach, life coach, emotional intelligence practitioner, and NLP practitioner. I'm also the founder of Abso Expertise Unique, and my organization constantly aims at building leaders across continents. After having worked with so many dynamic business honchos, entrepreneurs, startups, CEOs, management gurus, parents, and student communities worldwide, I am convinced that every individual has unleashed potential, and all we really need to do is realize it. Watch the magic unfold, enhance quality of life, relationships, and professions. On my show, be ready for some riveting conversations with inspirational people, snippets, stories, and much more. So here I am on this exceptional journey to find empowerment and inspiration anywhere I can. Come join me on this breathtaking path of self-realization, potential maximization, positivity, and most of all, embrace your inner power. You are on your way to empowering yourselves. Welcome to the Empowering Series with Zarina Poonawalla. Hello and welcome to the Empowering Series with me, Zarina. On today's episode, I'm in conversation with an effervescent and vivacious woman. Courageous enough, she's taken the leap of faith from being a media professional and jumping right into her passion for food and culinary. Most importantly, she's a very proud cat mom, and I can't leave this out of her introduction. So please welcome Subhasree Basu, the founder of Hungry Cat Kitchen. Hello, Subhashri.
Hi, Zarina. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
All good. So happy to be back at work and now on your show. I'm really looking forward to our chit chat today.
I know, so am I. Thank you so much. I know you had a very busy schedule and a couple of busy weekends because that's when I spoke with you last. So how has it been for you through this entire few months?
Yes. In the month of March when the city went on a lockdown, most of us small business owners were in a really bad state of mind. We did not know what the future held for us. But we slowly, when things started to change, we reopened the kitchen about 6 weeks ago. And we are trudging through, and I think we should be able to see it through till the end of the year, for sure. So that's really encouraging.
That sounds motivating. But how has it been, the whole demotivation factor at some point and not knowing what the future holds and kind of, having to put across all of that with so much positivity and grit? How have you been holding up?
That's the tough bit, The thing is that as a small business owner, when you start off on your journey, you face so many obstacles that you are not prepared to face. And then you conquer them one by one. So I think experience, takes the cake in the sense that because you know that you've been there and done that, you can sort of manage anxiety a little better, perhaps.
Right. So I'm going to come to these obstacles and challenges you just now mentioned. But before that, I'd love to know how you actually went from being a media professional to a self-taught chef, if I may say so. So what is the whole journey about? Tell us how it's all happened, how it's worked out for you.
You see, I come from Calcutta. I had a very sort of protected upbringing in a joint family. Then I started working in media in Calcutta, and I started looking for better pastures and made a move to Bombay. This was in the year 2003. And I've worked in media sales for approximately 15 years. Around 2014, I sort of figured that there was a certain amount of fatigue which was setting in. And I thought that I'd take a break. So the sabbatical was all about traveling a bit and then exploring what could be my next stage career-wise. So what I did was around 2014, the home chef movement was really gaining a lot of momentum. There was a lot of talk about it in the press. People were getting written about. And I toyed with the idea and I gave myself about 6 months. And I promised myself that if I didn't succeed in those 6 months, I'll go back to my old job. Luckily for me, things worked out. And when I, started this home dining concept at home, I got a great response. There were, on a monthly basis, I would get 15, 16 people to come over and have a full proper meal. It was a fun exercise. And then I started catering from home as well. But slowly I realized that there was no point in catering from home in the long run because I wanted to really expand. And a small domestic home kitchen in which I worked was not good enough. So I needed a commercial setup. So I was on the lookout for someone who would sort of partner with me in that endeavor. And I found a partner, Farzan Patel, who wrote a successful blog called Bavi Bride. And she also ran a catering service called Bavi Bride Kitchen. And so together with Farzan in the year 2017, we set up a company called Greedy Foods Private Limited. And we had our commercial kitchen in Mahim. It's a completely professionally run kitchen. We hired chefs and helpers and the works. We got onto online food aggregators like Zomato and Swiggy, etc. And a large part of our efforts came from house catering, private parties, as well as corporate catering. So that's how it happened. And slowly, today, with Farzan having relocated back to New Zealand a year ago, I have got on board a new partner, Manju, and together we run Beauty Foods. And Hungry Cat Kitchen is doing really well in the food space right now where catering is concerned.
That's really nice. And I didn't know that you worked with Person because she's been on my show many episodes ago before she left for New Zealand. And she talked about, she talked about, motherhood and things like that and managing that aspect of life. So that's really nice. So you've kind of hung on and, 6 months became a couple years and you kind of pulled yourself through with this whole procedure. And sometimes I think it's difficult, Subhashri, when you look at, people trying to follow a passion and making it a profession. What's your take on that? Because a lot of times what really happens is people leave their really secure jobs and get on to pursuing their passion. But then on the way, they do get demotivated. They lose interest and, things don't work out for everybody a lot of times. What is your take on that?
So, see, the biggest learning I've had switching from a corporate career to becoming an entrepreneur is that the security of having a bank balance, the security of having your salary credited to your account in the beginning of the month, that goes for a toss. And that's a huge, it's a payoff in a certain sense. Because what you get in return is validation. You get in return is that your passion is rewarded in tangible terms, initially at least. Luckily for me, before I started off, I spoke to a lot of other entrepreneurs who had started small and then slowly gotten big. And it helped give, shape to how I wanted to strategize and, take my business to the next level. So, for example, the people that I spoke with always told me that think of it as a business first. And then, a passion, in the sense that if you think that it is a hobby, you will never be able to monetize on it. There will be people around you, your friends and your family and your well-wishers who will always say that you're the best. But you have to sort of look at yourself from a distance and understand what you're doing and why you're doing and where you stand. That's really important. So for me, that transition from corporate to entrepreneurial journey has been all about that. I kept motivating myself to think that here I am, I have given up XYZ in life, and I have to sort of make this work with all the might that I have.
Right. And all the might that you have, you came up with this name, Hungry Cat Kitchen. So tell us the story behind that, really.
So I've always been a cat person ever since I was a child in Calcutta, and I never got to keep a cat at home because you know how single life can be, working life can be in Bombay. But when I got married, my husband and I adopted a cat, a stray cat, and his name is Meowjeet. He's much celebrated. He has a social media fan following as well. And so when it was time to name my brand, some of my friends who are in advertising, if this is professional harakiri, because there are a lot of people out there who don't like cats. There are a lot of people out there who associate cats with things which are dirty and superstitious, etc. And they said that, listen, if you are taking a leap of faith, you should go the whole hog. I mean, you should just go for it. And if you think it will work, it will work. And Zarina, the fun thing is that today, after 3-4 years and having a substantial number of clients, loyal clients in my database, I connect to people, a lot of people, through this love for cats and dogs. It has really helped me. Because cat moms and cat moms are a thing, that kind of friendship does exist. I get 12 a.m. messages about my cat is not eating, what should I do, blah, blah, blah. And it's great fun. So I'm really proud that I went, along my instincts. I followed my instincts and named my brand after my cat.
That is so sweet because, I don't completely understand where that comes from because I haven't really had pets ever so far. And I just call myself a plant mom if I have to call myself something because I have this massive love for plants actually. So that's all that really, that's the conversation I have with people. My plant is not growing or the leaves are yellow or this or that. So I understand that yes, there is a community of people who understand that mindset, and it's great that you can connect with them even on the basis of the food as well as a passion and a love for the cats and the dogs. Yeah. And I also read about Meowjeet, by the way. Yes, I like the name. It's quite.
My husband actually. My husband's name is Orijit, which is a very common Bengali name. So because of Tomcat, we named him Meowjeet because he's his father's son. And God forbid if it was a woman, then she would be called Meowshri.
Meowshri, okay, fine. No call. It sounds like it because the Jeet sounds either Bengali or Punjabi. You can't really tell the difference. It
goes both ways. Yeah,
it goes both ways, right? Anyway, so tell me this. You've been, like we talked about the challenges that you may have had, during this journey. Not only professionally, but even personally. I'm sure that when you kind of leave something secured and move on to some other pastures, there are people who give you sane advice like they did about not considering it a hobby. But then there are also people who kind of dissuade you on the way and kind of diss the whole idea completely, right? How do you deal with all these challenges and obstacles?
So when one starts an entrepreneurial journey and leaves the security of salary, the family really has to sacrifice a lot. In my case, especially, I had the monetary support because my husband was working. I started my company with my savings. That's there. So thankfully, I did not have to take any loans, etc. And the other sacrifice people had to make because of my decision was that earlier on, we used to be very, very social. But when you start a job, a business of your own, your social life really goes for a toss. And this I've heard not only from people in the food industry, but from across all industries that, I don't get to meet my friends as often as I can or should, So that's a big toll that it's taken because of this decision.
Right. I know entrepreneurship it can be a very lonely journey for a lot of people and also a very tiring and exhausting one because you have to rely on yourself. It's your baby that you're dealing with.
Absolutely. You have to nurture it every single moment. And which is why I somehow knew about this journey being this challenging, which is why it was a conscious decision for me to expand only and only if I got the right partner.
Right. Yeah. So, talking about partnership, Subhashri, how does a good partnership work?
So I think we all agree on one fact that the first factor, the biggest factor in partnership is complete honesty. You have to be honest with each other, and that brings about your reliability factor. The second thing I think very important is that you should not have any ego hassles. So you have to leave that part of your personality behind. Your partner and you should be able to sort of relate to each other and talk to each other very honestly. And therefore, it is imminent that once in a while in this journey, there will be some takedown, there will be some, explosive blast which happens. And I think it's great that it happens because then, it's water under the bridge, everything is clear again, and you can go back to focusing on your journey again together.
True. Because partnerships these days, when you look at the business scenario, a lot of times, they're a little more fleeting, a little more fickle at times because maybe there is this sense of transparency that goes missing. And sometimes people are extremely transparent, but they lack patience to kind of understand each other in a partnership. That's the reason why it would be nice, you told us about the transparency and anything else that you might want to add there.
Yeah, so the complementary set of skills is always an added bonus because then you can divide your duties. So I look after a particular part of the functions of the company and my partner looks after the back end, for example. So there is no duality of roles. And because there is no duality of roles, there is no ambiguity in, if something falls apart tomorrow, I won't be raising my finger at somebody else and says, hey, I thought this was your job, but you did not do it. Because at the end of the day, if you have your KRAs, your key responsibility areas, chalked down in a very sort of clear manner, precisely, these things will never arise. So I think a complementary set of talents between partners is always an added bonus.
That sounds like great leadership skills, Subhashri. I'm very happy you took that leap and moved to entrepreneurship. You really have it in you. There's so much fire in your belly when you're talking about it. You can just kind of sense it, and even in the voice. So that's pretty great, actually. Like I said, you sound really optimistic. How have you managed to find that light at the end of the tunnel, even in these times? Let's say last 6 weeks, like you mentioned, have been you trudging along and, starting off and continuing, being consistent. But it could be a little daunting sometimes. How do you find your optimism, and how do you think smaller businesses currently should find that optimism in these times?
So, see, what we've been hit with on our face right now, where the COVID situation is concerned, is completely unprecedented. And the dynamics of the virus, every day that we get all these news from the World Health Organization and all the leading publications, the dynamics of the virus also are questionable. So the rules are changing every day. Some days there is a lockdown, some state, and the other day there isn't. So initially, when the lockdown started, it was fairly hopeless in the sense that, no, let me be very honest. At first, everybody really thought it was about 2 weeks, this lockdown, and then there will be a solution. Everything will be back to normal, right? But when that didn't happen, and every 2 weeks became like 4 weeks and 6 weeks, and it became fairly tiresome and hopeless for everybody. I think what really went on in my mind was just to stay afloat for the rest of the year. I had made up my mind that come what may, we'll have to see this through. I have to pay my rent, I have to take care of my employees, and I have to deliver. I mean, small, big, medium order, I don't care. So eventually, when there was a little scope and essential services were allowed to function again, we jumped right in. And you wouldn't believe this, but it was just me and my partner Manju in the kitchen 3 days a week, handling everything. Okay. And there were initially those loyal customers also. I mean, I salute them that they had complete faith in us. And they said that we have not allowed any outside food into our house, but because we know you guys, we are ordering from you, we want to help and support you. So for 2 weeks, if that was the case, it was insane. Inhuman amount of labor went into that. Currently, I have one chef who's come back and quarantined, and he is helping us in the kitchen now. What can I say about, the scene right now? We are following, everybody in the food industry can only do as much as they can in terms of sanitization and, following the guidelines set internationally, which is basically about frequent temperature checks and sanitizing the surfaces very frequently. You also want to lessen the exposure of your staff to outsider elements, So, for example, the staff member that I just mentioned, he's currently living within the premises to minimize the risk of his contamination. We don't allow anybody else to enter the kitchen except for the three of us. And we ourselves, needless to say, avoid exposure as much as we can to keep ourselves safe and in fighting fit form. So, but to come back to your question in a very sort of objective manner, there is always a silver lining that you will find if you look for it at the end of the tunnel. So for me, I get to know my clients even better now. So there are dedicated clients who order every weekend only from us. That's one. Yeah. There is another factor that there is more word of mouth and more noise and more chatter. So the clients are supporting small business. So you would have seen that on Instagram, for example, there is this support small business movement. And it's a legit movement. I can vouch for that people are really internalizing it and calling for things and supporting local businesses. So strangers have come forward and shared all our menus and recommended us to others, etc. So my client database has also gone up. I assume that for others, it would have also been the same. They would have also have benefited from this. Thirdly, I think the supply relationships are becoming stronger and more real in the sense that even my suppliers have to push their personal boundaries and think of, things out of the hat and come out with better solutions, more efficient solutions. So I found that to be beneficial to my business. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that this beautiful thing has happened, that we are all working towards decreasing wastage in the kitchen. And this is great in terms of not only your efficiency of the job, you are performing better because you're wasting less, but it is also great for the environment at the end of the day. And finally, I mean, at a personal level, we innovate a lot where menus are concerned. So we are constantly learning new things, and learning is great, so it's back to basics.
Of course. Since you mentioned, Subhashri, the whole, satisfaction of having such loyal clients and customers coming back to you every weekend, I personally feel it's also to do with the fact that, homebred and homegrown chefs seem to have a certain amount of credibility in terms of the safety and security and the cleanliness or the hygiene at this point in time, which probably restaurants may not have. I prefer to call from, a kitchen rather than calling from a restaurant at this point in time. So that's my perception. Do you think I'm on the right lines here, or do you agree? Do you disagree? What is your thought on it?
So from my conversations with most of my clients, I think you're absolutely spot on. Clients mostly depend on delivery kitchens and home chefs when they see a face to the name. They know this person, they have this who inspires a certain set of values. So they know that the hygiene will be taken care of, minimum standards would be adhered to, and trust is a very, very big thing. So for me, in my case especially, I have seen that really work. The business has really taken off on that front, because people can talk to me. They know that I'm responsible for what I'm putting out there and not just a brand behind a wall, So yeah, I mean, home chefs really have it good right now. Yeah.
So that's also an addition to that silver lining that we're looking at, which is pretty good. I just think the attitude and the approach really matters at this point in time, because, of course, financially, a lot of companies in general, if you look at the scenario around us, the pandemic has caused a big shift in the economy for not only our country, but even otherwise. And maybe, a lot of companies aren't able to sustain, but I personally have seen the smaller companies, the SMEs, able to hold their forts a little stronger than the MNCs at this point in time.
That is absolutely true. Yeah.
Right? I'm guessing that's possibly why at this point in time it's great, in fact, to be a smaller business than a bigger one. It just kind of will keep you consistent, and it'll get you through this time, I'm guessing.
Yes, and overheads too. I mean, we have smaller overheads than the bigger companies, and we have more personal investment in the company. So we look after the company like our baby.
Right. Absolutely. So, I'd love to know a little bit about the kind of food. Is it fusion? Is it just literally proper homemade khana? What is the kind of food that you indulge in and you want your people to indulge in? All the foodies.
So Hungry Cat Kitchen, my product is multi-cuisine. What I deliver is largely what I call comfort food that leaves you happy and satiated. Those are the two things that you must feel at the end of a meal. And I figured that during the early course of finding my brand, so to speak, that slow cooking is a means to make a lot of comfort food in India as well as abroad. So for example, be it a Punjabi kali dal or a Bengali kosha mangsho, slow cooking is the method which sort of immediately you visualize that it will be something exotic and something very comforting and something you really crave for that kind of food. So Hungry Cat Kitchen today stands for comfort food. And slow cooking is a specialization which leads to that. But most importantly for me, like I mentioned, the client should feel happy and satiated after every meal. So everything else will follow after that. I mean, the food has to be well cooked and the flavors have to speak for themselves. So that's what we basically stand for. The menu, I would say that, like I say, that the highlights of the menu would be that we specialize in a lot of pork items. So this was a conscious call. It was a risky call as well, initial days, because I figured after talking to a lot of people that there were a lot of people who eat pork, but not as much or as frequently as they'd like to, because the options available to them are either too sweet or too limited, too many spices, Like, for example, a vindaloo or a sorpotel has a lot of spices, a lot of masala. And people were constantly complaining to me that, that there is no other hope other than East Indian, Goan and Chinese food for us to order where pork is concerned. So then I took that and I worked on that. And today we do a plethora of things with pork, which perhaps were never done with pork. For example, we do a kosha pork in the lines of a Bengali kosha mangsho, which is usually made with the lamb. Or we do pork in a mustard sauce. We do pork chops in a festive sauce with wine and stuff like that. So that's one. The other one is that we do slow cooked curries, like I mentioned to you earlier. And the icing on the cake is that, it just started off as an experiment, but it has really worked for us, is that we specialize in something called a pot pie. So a pot pie is essentially a pie which has a lot of filling in a container, and it has a covering which could be a puff or a short crust pastry on top. Okay, so it's not, therefore, the flour content and the butter content in the pie is very limited. So it's not very floury. It's all about the filling and the goodness of it. So pot pies are also one of our specialties. So these are on the Hungry Cat Kitchen regular menu. Apart from that, we do international and regional food as well, because a large part of our revenues come from corporate, or used to come from corporate catering, up to 200 people, full service corporate catering, as well as private parties like birthday parties and anniversary parties and things like that. So that's what Hungry Cat Kitchen stands for today.
That's quite a menu you have there. And I'm sure that people are they're constantly coming back to you because of the, wondrous things you're offering there. However, I don't eat a couple of things on that menu, so I probably will order other things there from your menu. What about the fact that you've come from the corporate background, and you mentioned a couple of corporates right now? Have you taken or imbibed any corporate lessons into your entrepreneurship here?
Yeah. So largely from my 15 years of experience in media sales, I was in a very sort of client-facing function. So what I have taken back with me and what I apply to my job pretty successfully right now is the client servicing chapter. Handling people, taking them for who they are, respecting differences and acknowledging who they are is very important when you are servicing clients. So even the language in which I speak to clients and what I speak to them about plays an important part in the company. So I would speak to you in a particular manner if you were a lawyer. If you were a creative person, I would discuss something else with you. And if you're a homemaker, completely different, So that part of it has really helped me abundantly in my current journey. And the other part is that the organizational skill part, because I'm a very visual person. Everything is a visual blueprint in my head. Sometimes it's even a Venn diagram. I don't know how. But it helps me take a step-by-step approach to everything. So if I have an event, for example, in 7 days, I will be able to tell you exactly what we should be doing from day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, and how it will culminate. Who should be assigned what kind of job? Do we have fallback contingency plans? Yeah. So these things, the organizational part in my head has been there since I had a corporate job, and only because I had a corporate job. And it really helps me today in how I run my business.
But it's quite fascinating to know that you're able to do that. That means you're also very meticulous, I presume.
Yes, the meticulous part only comes because there is no other alternative to one thing in the world, which is hard work, right? And experience. You have to experience everything for yourself. You have to, taste success, and you have to also taste failure in order to get that thing inside your head. So which is why, whatever I speak, I may not have like 10 things to tell you, but, the lessons that I have learned, even if 3, are very, very strongly embedded in my head. So, rigorous and hard work has no answer. There is no substitute of that in the world.
Yes. My physics professor used to say, he used to write it in every book of ours when we used to start class. There is no substitute to hard work. That was his line always. So yes, I completely get what you mean. Yeah, we learned that at a very young age. But do you feel that these days people prefer smart work over hard work, Subhashri?
I'm not anti-smart work either, to be absolutely honest.
Yes, absolutely.
What I don't like is for any generation to sit back and relax and think that you can run it like with robotic hands. That's not going to happen. You have to, if you are starting a business, you have to get down and dirty and really, really work it out, in the mud. Because otherwise you will never learn your lessons the right way.
True. I think it's a combination, right? I mean, there's a time and a space where you really need to put the hard work, and then comes a time when you work smart. But you've got to know which one you've got to use when and how.
It is a life cycle stage, like every life cycle stage in a brand. Initial days, if you really put in the hard work, later you can perhaps sit back and relax a little more than otherwise. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Now, coming to, you obviously have such a personal relationship with your clientele, right? So, Subhashri, any funny incident or any funny conversation you've ever had with a client, which is had you in splits and wondering, what is going on here?
Oh yeah, I have tales and tales, but I'll restrict it to one right now. So as I mentioned earlier, a person and I started this company, and from the same company, which is Greedy Foods, we had her brand, which is Bobby Bride Kitchen, also catering, right? So we would get a lot of Parsi people calling us up, especially mayhem during Navroz of the Parsi New Year. So there was, I recall one gentleman who called me up in the middle of the night asking me, about our Salli Margi, which is Salli chicken, basically.
Right.
And then he asks me, I couldn't see his face, but in all seriousness, I could sort of imagine his face. He's asking me, how many pieces of chicken? So I said that, we give you a leg and blah, blah, blah. And the next question, even before I could finish the answer, he snapped at me and he said, which leg? I mean, it's such a Baba thing to do. I was scared. I was really scared. It is such a Baba thing to do. Which leg? I mean, how does it matter if it's a left or a right?
But that is quite hilarious. I'm sure you have a couple of these incidents happening around you, and you don't handle a lot of clientele. And how do you manage to do that? I mean, it's so personal, right?
Yeah. You have to keep your cool all the time, first of all. Mm-hmm. Those are life lessons. I used to have a temper before I became an entrepreneur. So I keep that under control right now. Ice packs really help. And otherwise, I mean, you have to understand that without clients, you're nothing at the end of the day, So, I mean, in all spirit, and the client is always right. And, Zarina, on that note, I wanted to ask you something, since you are a life coach. I was just wondering that, considering what I do is pretty much a 24/7 job mentally, if not physically. And clients only want to talk to me, the owner, to interact with them at any given point of time. So I feel pretty drained out sometimes at the end of the day. And it's very hard to stay motivated every single day, So I was thinking, is there a way I can develop my own process or some kind of mental exercise to stay motivated on a daily basis?
Yes, of course. It's my job also to listen to everybody's problems all day. When I'm usually asked by my clients only, how do you manage to stay positive? My usual response to them is, I'm so busy solving your issues that I don't have the time to be negative, and my problems just solve themselves. By the time I reach my problem, it's already solved because I've been busy with somebody else's problem. But nonetheless, the thing is, if you want to really kind of, be able to not get completely drowned in that kind of a feeling, and it can also reduces the spirit, right? You just feel slightly demotivated trying to constantly keep up with things. One thing that you should possibly think of doing is compartmentalize. There is a time for you. There are spots in your day which you must make sure are simply belong to you, even if it's just 5 minutes. Even if it's just 5, it's okay. And moreover, sometimes what happens is it's all about the approach. Like, you have such an optimistic way of looking at life anyway. I'm pretty sure it's easy for you that way. But in the sense that, when there are people who think that, oh, this is my job and I have to do it, things change. And the minute you're thinking, this is my client and I want to do this, things change. But nonetheless, I'm sure you already have that attitude. Only thing you possibly can do better is compartmentalize. Pick up 5 minutes of the morning, pick up 5 minutes of the evening, pick up 5 minutes in the middle of the day where you re-energize yourself to deal with all of this, So that could be I'm pretty sure the cats give you a good amount of time there, and that is a good way of re-energizing. But do anything that makes you happy for a little while so that you have that energy to refocus again. That's all.
Just like a me time window.
Just a little bit. Yes. And I'm sure that with entrepreneurs, it's very hard when you're splitting your day up to find that me time. You're like, I have no time, which is fair. It's understandable. But then we have time and we don't have time. It's the same thing. It's just a paradox that we live in. So we've got to make it happen for us.
Thank you for that. I'll definitely try and take time out for myself like that. I mean, consciously. Yeah.
Consciously, just a little intentful 5-7 minutes, up in the day, mid of the day, end of the day, whenever you like, but just something which is just yours and nobody else's, that belongs to you, right? That kind of time. That brings me to another very interesting question. So see, I've done my research on you, right? And I did come across the fact that you also love TV series and you watch a lot of shows. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, Subhashri, can you recommend some for our listeners and recommend some to me also, because I pretty much also enjoy my Netflix and Amazon time.
So I have pretty dark tastes. I like espionage and I like a lot of Nordic noir series. So one very interesting series, which is about 2 years old, is a Nordic series called Occupied. In Norwegian, they call it Occupert. It's about the occupation of Norway by Russia. And you must definitely watch it. It's a political thriller. So that's a good one. There are 2 seasons there. One really beautiful period piece, again, the espionage series called Babylon Berlin. You must watch that. And there's another German series called Deutschland 83. That's about East and West Germany. Okay, so these 3 for sure. And and amongst the more recent ones in English, I would recommend, if you haven't already seen Fargo, 3 seasons of Fargo have already happened. It's produced by the Coen brothers, who are prolific, and the writing is excellent. So I would definitely recommend your viewers Fargo.
I watched Fargo already, but these sound interesting. I'm watching Dark, which is also German, I believe. So the genre does seem interesting, but I'm going to take these recommendations personally also now. And you also sound very good in critiquing and reviewing. I think you should give that a shot as well.
No, what if somebody gives it back to me like that?
I'm pretty sure that won't happen. Well, Subhashri, it's bringing me to the end of our conversation, and I have to definitely end this conversation with my signature question to you. What empowers you?
Okay, I have a pretty funny answer to that, the first part of it.
Do tell.
I'm doing, being very thorough about my offerings. I know what I'm doing and I know my product and what I can do. That empowers me. But what also empowers me is to know what I can't do. I know it sounds a little funny, but I have seen people out there who in their heads truly believe that what they're doing is really good when they are not. I don't want to be in that situation, So I know that there is a certain kind of thing that I should not get into because perhaps I will not be able to do justice to it. So having that information, and that information comes from people who are really close to you and are honest to you and tell you things on your face, So that empowers me. The other thing that really empowers me is knowing who I'm speaking to. If you know that the voice at the other end, who it belongs to, what that person is like, it helps you understand why you are striking this chord with that person. That also empowers me in some way. I know who I'm talking to. And most importantly, I think because I'm an entrepreneur, the biggest empowering tool is that I choose my milestones myself. I'm not chasing somebody else's targets anymore. So I'm doing this for myself. I can realign, I can readjust things on my own as and when as I want to, so I'll have that control over things. So that is really empowering a thought.
This is very beautifully put, I would say, the whole empowerment bit. And of course, your first answer, the first bit was not funny. I think it was very empowering and different. Experiment in a way, the founder of Alibaba, Jack Ma, also mentioned this, that sometimes you must know what you don't want instead of knowing what you want. And it really can be very empowering for people to filter that out. So that's a great piece of advice. Thank you so much. So Subhashri, it's been such a wonderful and pleasant conversation. And this thing you mentioned even about, connecting with a person on the other side, I feel quite connected in this conversation. It's been great to have you. Any last thoughts?
Well, I definitely think that every entrepreneur who has made it big, small, medium, should have this in their nature to pay it forward. And so I'd like to tell your viewers that if there's anybody out there who's toying with the idea of becoming an entrepreneur, they should completely give it a try, a shot. And in case they are in the food business and they'd like some advice from me in whatever capacity, I'm always there to pay it forward. Because I remember that when I started my journey, there were some people who went out of their ways to give me very sane, very kind advice, took their time out and gave me feedback also. And those are things that I will never forget. So I really want to do my bit as well, and so pay it forward in that manner.
Thank you so much, Subhashri, for joining me in this conversation today and empowering us and enlightening us and sharing all these wonderful secrets from your corporate aspect and your entrepreneur aspect as well, and also from a cat mom aspect. It was lovely to have you today. Thank you so very much for being with me.
You're always welcome. It was completely my pleasure, Zarina, and I look forward to feeding you soon.
Yes, definitely. Take good care of yourself.
All right.
If you liked this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money. So it's been a really, really fun week this week. We've had a great episode with Anand Nilakantha on Cyrus Says. Anand was one of the writers of Bahubali, and it's done some really, really fun stuff since that. Ashish Vidyarthi also had a really good episode on his show, Begin the Journey. Please do check that out. You do know Yuddha is back, right? Definitely check it out if you haven't. Yuddha is our show about Indian ancient warfare. It's hosted by Anirudh Kanisetti and Aditya Ramanathan. Really, really great show. You should check that out for sure. And I forgot. Rishikesh was on the network as well. He was on Absolutely Right with Aditi Surana. Do definitely check that out. With that, hope to see you next week.
Namaskar, dear Bandhu. My name is Ashish Vidyarthi. These are truly challenging times, and in these times, we need hope. Do take time to listen to my podcast, Begin the Journey. Available on IVM Podcasts, website, app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember, there is hope because there's one life and we are alive.